Elliot wasn't the kind of man who made grand gestures. He liked small ones, making coffee for someone before they woke up, fixing a squeaky hinge without being asked, folding a scarf just so before tucking it into a gift bag. He believed love was built in the quiet spaces between two people. But when Claire moved 2,000 miles away, he realized the quiet spaces could feel like chasms. It wasn't a breakup. Not exactly. She'd been offered her dream job, restoring historic buildings in a small coastal town in Maine. He still remembered the way she'd told him over the phone, her voice equal parts thrilled and guilty. It's everything I've worked for, Elliot, but it's so far. He'd congratulated her. He'd meant it. But when the call ended, the silence in his small Denver apartment felt heavier than the thin mountain air. For the first few months, they managed. Texts in the morning, late-night calls when their schedules aligned, little care packages, her sending him wild blueberry jam, him sending her coffee beans from the shop around the corner. But as winter rolled in, the calls became shorter. She sounded tired. He sounded distracted. It wasn't that the love had gone. It was just adrift. The idea came to him one night in March, after a particularly stilted call where they talked about the weather and little else. He closed his laptop and stared at the wall. Then he glanced at the old hiking boots by the door. He thought about how long it would take to walk from Denver to the coast of Maine. He knew it was ridiculous, but something about the absurdity made him smile for the first time in weeks. The next morning, he looked it up, over 2,000 miles. He'd need months. He'd need to plan, save, and pack. He didn't tell Claire. He didn't tell anyone, really. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about showing up. Literally. Elliot left in late April, when the snow had melted from the sidewalks, but the mountains still wore white caps. He carried a worn canvas backpack, 2 changes of clothes, a rain jacket, a journal, and the scarf Claire had knitted him their first winter together. He slept in cheap motels on friends' couches, sometimes in a tent just outside town. Along the way, he met people who gave him rides for a few miles, meals at diners, stories over campfires. One morning in Kansas, he stopped at a roadside diner where the waitress asked where he was headed. When he told her, she raised an eyebrow. "You're walking all that way for a girl?" Elliot just smiled. "For love." She refilled his coffee and said, "Well, I hope she's worth every blister." The days were long. His legs ached. Rain soaked him through more than once. But there were moments that made it worth it. Sunrises spilling over wheat fields, strangers waving from porches, the quiet hum of his own thoughts settling into something steady. At night, he'd take out his journal and write little notes to Claire, though he never sent them. "Saw a hawk circle over the fields today. Reminded me of how you look at the sky, like you're reading something in it. Passed a bakery in Ohio. Smelled just like the one you loved in Denver." By the time he reached Pennsylvania, his boots were worn thin. He stopped in a small town to buy a new pair, using nearly the last of his savings. He figured he'd work odd jobs along the way if he had to. He thought about calling Claire to tell her he was coming, but part of him wanted the surprise. The other part was afraid she'd tell him not to. By October, the air was sharper, the days shorter. He crossed into Maine under a sky so clear it felt like glass. He was tired, bone-tired, but his steps felt lighter now. He reached the coastal town just as the leaves turned, gold and crimson spilling over the streets. He found her office easily. It was in the old brick building she'd told him about months ago. Through the window, he saw her, bent over a table with blueprints spread out. Her hair was a little shorter, her sweater flecked with paint. She looked exactly like herself. He stood there for a moment, his heart knocking against his ribs. Then he opened the door. She looked up, and for a second, there was just surprise, pure unguarded. Then confusion. Then something softer. "Elliot? What are you doing here?" He took a breath. "I walked here. From Denver." She blinked. "You what?" "I wanted to see you. To show you that distance doesn't have to mean gone." He hesitated. "I don't know what we are right now, but I know I love you, and I didn't want that to just fade because it was hard." For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then she came around the table and hugged him. It wasn't the dramatic movie kind. It was warm, quiet, the kind you sink into. She pulled back just enough to look at him. "You're crazy."
Probably, he said.
She shook her head, smiling in that way that meant she was trying not to cry. "You must be freezing. Come on, I'll make you tea." They spent the evening catching up, not trying to fill the gaps, just letting them be. She showed him the buildings she was restoring, the coastline she walked every morning. He told her about the people he'd met, the miles he'd counted, the coffee in that Kansas diner. It didn't fix everything. Love isn't fixed in a single moment, but it reminded them both of what they'd had, and that it was still there. When he left a week later, they didn't make promises they couldn't keep, but they did make one. They'd see each other in person every few months, no matter what. And they kept it. Years later, they told their story over dinner to friends. People always laughed at the absurdity, the stubborn romance of it. Elliot never minded. He knew the truth. Walking across America hadn't been about proving his love to Claire. It had been about proving to himself that love was worth showing up for, even when it meant blistered feet, empty pockets, and months on the road. Sometimes, the grandest gestures are built one step at a time. This is Donna Stories, where endings are just the beginning.